So today we begin our new stream, one of the two streams that we'll be doing weekly. This is on Phaladeepika. Phaladeepika is a 14th century Sanskrit astrology text, which is honestly my favorite book. And the reason is that he really clarifies and systematizes. He clarifies the pre-existing systems, especially the Parashara system. So by studying Phaladeepika, it's like studying Parashara with a guru or somebody who understands it. So I really like this book, and I felt this is a good place to start. I plan to do 3 or 4 other books as well. But let's get through this one first. So let's see how it starts off. He begins... let me give you an overview of what he's going to cover in the book. He's going to cover the basics, like signs, houses, planets. And he's going to talk about how planets have dignity and how planets have strength. Then he's also going to talk about the sub-signs, which are amshas, and the sub-planets for the basic. That's his basic stuff that he's going to cover. Then he's also going to cover, as almost every text sort of has to do, give examples of how you interpret rising signs, moon signs, planets and houses, how to interpret houses, how to use a karaka or indicator of a subject as a lagna for the subject. I should have drank a little bit of something. He's going to talk about conjunctions and aspects. He's going to talk about career, how to interpret things for career, for marriage. He's going to talk about feminine topics. He's going to talk about fertility, longevity interpretations, disease, death, and afterlife, and then other types of yogas. And then he's also, what I would say is in the third part of the book, he's going to talk about time-based predictions. So dashas, sub-dashas, Ashtak Varga, and transits. He's going to define all that in the book. So that's what we have ahead of us. It's 27 chapters, I believe. Maybe it's 28 chapters altogether. Okay, so with chapter 1, he starts off with a preface, which is a typical thing for people to do, especially in Sanskrit as well. In Sanskrit, the preface is called Mangalacharana, which means auspicious beginning. So let's hear what his Mangalacharana is. I'm not reading Sanskrit for this, but I'll read you the English. So he starts up the book by saying, the supreme entity. So that's kind of great. He starts up the book by referencing the supreme entity. So he's tying astrology to something divine right at the beginning, but that's basically all he's going to say about it, about that subject. So he starts off by saying the supreme entity appears in the heavens as the sun. So out of all the lights in the sky, the sun is the most direct and perceivable manifestation of the supreme being, or the supreme entity. The supreme entity appears in the heavens as the sun. Mortals see it for half a day, ancestors for half a month, and gods for half a year. For some it moves in the south, for others in the north. May it bless us forever. That's half of the introduction. Let's just talk about it for a second. So it's a very interesting thing, the way that he describes the sun, the way that he writes it a little bit, in the Sanskrit, it's a little bit more like a puzzle. Like, what is he talking about? And then at the end you realize it's the sun. Maybe I could work on that in the English translation. But why is it that the sun is described as being seen by mortals for half a day, ancestors for half a month, and gods for half a year? It's because of Uva and Swa, basically. So mortals live on the earth. And because they live on the earth, we live on the earth, we see it for half a day. Sun rises, it stays in the sky for half a day, and then it goes away. Now that same motion of the sun rising, staying visible for some time, and then becoming invisible, every resident of the universe experiences that, but on different time scales, because of the different locations that they live in. So the other two people that Mangalacharana mentions, Mangalacharana is the author of the book, the other two, what do you call it? The other two classes of beings that he mentions are the ancestors and the gods, Pitris and the Devas. Pitris see it for half a month. That means that their locus point is the moon. If you're on the moon, then the sunrise happens, and then you get 6 months of sun. I'm sorry, if the sunrise happens, then you get 2 weeks of sun, because a full lunar day is 1 month. So you'll get 2 weeks of sun, 1 fortnight of Gaura Paksha, Shukla Paksha, and one Krishna Paksha, where it decreases, where it's dark. So because the ancestors are associated with the moon's realm, they're known to see it for 1 fortnight, which is half a month. Then the gods, they live in the nakshatras. So how do they see the sun rise and fall? It's determined by the celestial horizon. The celestial horizon is the equator of Bhumandal, projected out into space, the equator of the earth projected out into space. And so when the sun comes to 0 degrees Aries, it comes over that point. And when it comes to 0 degrees Cancer, it's at the highest zenith of the day, like noon of the year. And then when it comes to 0 degrees Libra, it's back setting. It's a setting sun. It's back at that Bhumandal point. And then it goes below the mandala. And it goes to the lowest point as 0 Capricorn. And that process takes 1 year. And therefore, if you're seeing the sun rise and set on that basis, then you're seeing the sun rise for 6 months and then set for 6 months. So that's the bit about the sun. Some people see it for half a day, some see it for half a month, some see it for half a year. And then he also says some people see it in the south and some people see it in the north. This is a 14th century text. So it's not too astonishing that he's aware of this, but he's obviously aware of the fact that some people live in the southern hemisphere and some people live in the northern hemisphere. Because when you're in the southern hemisphere, then the sun's area of the sky is northward, because the equator is to your north. The sun hovers around the equator. And if you're in the northern hemisphere, then the sun's area is southward from you. So that's what he means by that. Okay, any questions on that? That's half of the introduction. Then the next half, he says, now he gives his pranam, his respectful devotion. I offer my respectful devotion to the 9 planets who reveal the past, present, and future. So he indicates the 9 planets, the sun, etc., the 9 Navagraha Adityadi, the 9 planets headed by the sun. And the thing that he says about them is that they reveal the past, present, and future. That's an astrologer's whole diet, right? That's an astrologer's whole technology, is how the positions of planets tell you about the past, present, and future. I offer my respectful devotion to the 9 planets who reveal the past, present, and future, to my parents and teachers, to my family deity, and to Vak, Ganesh, and Shiva. I, Mangalacharana, present you this book, Phaladeepika, a clarification of the astrology established by Atri, Parashara, and others. All right, that's his intro. Now we can start the main bit. Now for his main thing, he makes his first point first you got to calculate a chart correctly. This is an important point. He says, first calculate a chart correctly, then proceed to interpret it. So first make sure that you've got it calculated correctly. He's not going to tell you anything about how to calculate it correctly, because this is not a astronomy text like a Surya Siddhanta. This is a astrology text where he's going to focus on the interpretations of the chart. But what he's saying is you can't really proceed to do interpretations of the chart unless you're confident that you have an accurate chart. So he says, first, calculate the chart correctly. Use the exact and accurate birth time from clocks. He says, use the technologies that you have, clocks, etc., whatever. People have always had some form of a clock, whether it's a sundial or whatever. He says, use it. I know too many astrologers who think that clocks are irrelevant, and they want to reassign the birth time on every single chart they see. Use the clock. The clock is there. It measured the time. So first we must calculate the chart correctly, use the exact and accurate birth time from clocks, and calculate the planetary positions carefully. Double check and confirm things. Only then proceed to evaluate the conditions and strengths of the planets to ascertain the fruits of a person's karma. Make sense? So far so good. That's his whole intro, really. Now he's going to start. The first topic that he's going to cover is signs. What are the zodiac signs? As I said, questions must be on topic. Even if they're interesting questions, they must be on topic, otherwise we're not going to cover them. So he's going to now devote maybe 2 chapters to describing the zodiac signs. It's kind of haphazard how it starts. And I sort of think things may have gotten out of order or added over the centuries in the copying of the text or something, because it seems like he would start with the third thing that he mentions, but he's got these 2 other bits in first. So he's going to describe the 12 signs of the zodiac, but first of all he describes how they relate to body parts and environments, and then he's going to get into what most people would start with, which is what planet rules what sign, etc., etc. So here's what he says. He says one interesting thing here. He says the borders between the signs are important, especially the borders at the end of Cancer, Scorpio, and Pisces. So the borders between any sign are important. He's actually, what he literally says is the border between each sign is significant, and what he actually says is the border between Cancer, Scorpio, and Pisces is really significant, and many people also think that the border between each sign is similar. So what he's talking about here is Gandanta, and he's demystifying the concept of Gandanta. Gandanta is a thing that for some reason the current batch of Vedic astrologers seem to think is something that you only have in a sidereal zodiac. But Gandanta is a very simple principle. First of all, Anta means an end or a border. Actually, Anta means an end, and Ganda means a section. So Gandanta means the end of a section. So what Mangalacharana is talking about is, there's many different sections. And wherever a section ends, that's important. But the biggest section is this section of 4 signs, because that gives you a triplicate in the zodiac where you get all of the 4 elements: earth, water, fire, earth, air, and water. And then the border at the end of a water sign is more of a border because it's a border between elements. He doesn't have to mention anything about nakshatras. He doesn't have to mention anything about navamshas. He just has to say that the border at the end of the water signs is more significant because you're bordering between fire. The next sign is fire, the opposite of water. For the previous borders, you're going from fire to earth. They're not totally the same, of course, no elements are the same, but they're not antithetical. Then you go from earth to air. Same thing. Then you go from air to water. But then you go from water to fire. And that border between water to fire is a serious change. It's a bigger change than the rest of the borders. So we single that out as a big border. That's what he says. Now he's going to describe how the 12 zodiac signs signify two topics: the parts of a body and the environments in the world. Maybe he starts with this because it's like Kalapurush concept, that the universe is a person and the zodiac is like an embodiment of the universal person. Maybe he did intend to start with this. Anyway, what he says is, you just take the zodiac. I mean, you'll see it drawn where there's like a person curving around the inside of a zodiac with their head at Aries and their feet at Pisces. But another way to do it is just have a person stand up straight and just start at the top with Aries and then label all the way down, 12 sections till you get to Pisces. So what he says is, Aries symbolizes the head. Now the head, but Taurus symbolizes the face. So when we say Aries symbolizes the head, we mean the top of the head, the crown of the head. And then Taurus is the next bit down, the mouth and the face. Some people like to put Taurus and say it's the throat as well. I don't mind that. But then they say, the third thing that he says now for Gemini, the way he describes it is very interesting. Like, it has to be on topic. Questions have to be about what Mangalacharana is talking about. Otherwise, I'm not going to. What author's Phaladeepika should we read? Mine. I'm doing a translation on it right now, and I'm sharing the translation with you as we go. And then by the time this is done, I'll publish it. So you got Aries at the top. Then you have Taurus is the mouth and the face. Then what he says about Gemini is it's above the heart. And so it actually, if you have the person standing like this, then it makes complete sense. Because Aries is the shoulders. Gemini is the shoulders. This whole region right here, potentially the throat, because why not? Because Venus is here in how your beauty in your face. Mercury is here in how you talk. So there's a question of whether or not the throat is Taurus or Gemini. I'm not sure what I believe. I don't really work. These are kind of like theoretical things, and if you get into medical and physical astrology, you'll dive into this, but I've never gotten really deep into those two subjects. But anyway, Gemini is the heart up to the face, and that includes your arms and your hands. Lungs are not Gemini. Lungs are the heart and the chest. I'm sorry, Cancer is the lungs. The heart and the chest. The whole chest area is Cancer. No doubt. This I know for sure, practical, because I did some work with asthma. I mean, you might remember, maybe 2 years back, I did a video about asthma. And it's definitely Cancer in the fourth house, is asthma, is breathing. Then Leo is the stomach. Now, this is the thing about Phaladeepika. It's a 14th century text. He's had time to iron things out and work things out over the centuries from the older systems. And somebody is saying, wait, no, Leo is the heart and Cancer is the breasts. This is after he's worked with the various systems, this is what he's come up with. We'll see if We'll see if he mentions chakras in this book. I kind of will be surprised. He hasn't so far in what I've translated. Because chakras is kind of a tantric thing. It may have actually... Anyway, I saw it mentioned in the Bhagavatam, so... We'll see. If he mentions chakras, then we'll cover how it relates to chakras. But now for the body parts. Aries, the head. Taurus is the face. Gemini is this area above your heart. Cancer is this part. So yes, breasts, chest, the inside parts too, the lungs, the hearts. Leo is just below that, so it's the stomach. And then Virgo is the waist. And then Libra is the abdomen, a little bit below that. Scorpio is the genitals. Sagittarius is the thighs, which also means your hips. So for women's beauty, also Cancer and Sagittarius are important. Then it's also the top of your legs, and then as you get to the middle of your legs, it's Capricorn. Then down to the shins is Aquarius, and then at the bottom is Pisces. So that's how that's how Phaladeepika assigns the Zodiac signs to body parts. And I want to say, and I'll probably have to say this every single stream, but the thing that I like about Phaladeepika is that he resolves a lot of gray areas or multiple opinions and things in a way which is most rational. Mangalacharana, by the way, is Tamil. He's from South India. Now, he's also going to explain how the zodiac signs relate to places in the earth. This is very useful for figuring out where a person would likely be happy to live, and what kind of environment you should be in. So it's very useful to know how the zodiac signs represent certain environments. So let's start that list now. So for Aries, he says that means the wilderness. That means not really a social place, an adventurous place, a place off on your own. So if you translate that into modern stuff, it's not like a big house with a lot of people in it, or especially a family. It's maybe just like several apartments here and there where you live by yourself. The wilderness. So Aries represents wilderness. Doesn't only have to be for where you live. Aries just represents the wilderness. If you want to find out where something is going to happen and you see it's in Aries, and you start to think that it's going to happen someplace out in a forest or in a wilderness somewhere, like on a mountain. More like a mountain. Taurus is the farms. So farm specifically means places where you're planting vegetables and tilling it. Gemini is the bedroom. So what does it mean? Just the bedroom? Why is it so specific now? We went from wilderness to farms to bedroom. So basically Gemini is like the bedroom means the place of enjoyment. So bedroom, theaters, movies, movie houses, concert halls, it's all Gemini. Places where human beings enjoy human stuff is Gemini. Farms, places where we grow things and animals work. Wilderness, places where human beings don't really live. Then Cancer is the ocean, the deep ocean. Leo is the mountains. How that's different from the wilderness? Not that much, but guess what? How is Leo and Aries different? They're not terribly different signs. Virgo is similar also to Taurus. Now look, that's also similar. They're both earth signs. Aries and Leo are both fire signs. They're out there being leaders, going off on their own. They're out in the mountains or in the wilderness. Virgo and Taurus, they're earth signs. They both have to do with agricultural places. So Taurus is the farm, And Virgo is a grain field, like the middle of America where they're growing tons of wheat and corn. It's a Virgo-y place. So Taurus is not a grain field. It's not, grain fields are more of this kind of wild. Taurus is more cultivated. Libra, similar to Gemini, both being air signs. Libra is beautiful places. So Gemini is places where we have fun. Libra are places where things are beautiful. So museums, art, stuff like that. Very similar. It's crossing over. Just all of these elements are crossing over. The fire elements are kind of similar. How do you differentiate the wilderness from the mountains? The earth signs are kind of crossing over. How do you differentiate a farm from a grain field? Similarly, the air signs, they're crossing over. How do you differentiate a bedroom from a beautiful place? Now, the water signs, Cancer is a deep place full of water. Scorpio is also some kind of a deep thing, but it's a cave or a river. Rivers make ravines. So it's like a ravine with the river, like the Grand Canyon. It's a Scorpio location. That's the one place in the world where I fully explored a cave, an abandoned mine, saw scorpions, all those kind of things. Now, how is that different from wilderness? Not terribly. And they both have the same ruler, Mars. So again, you could see that there's going to be similarity. This place that the sign represents is going to be similar based on the element and also based on the ruler. So then for the final four signs, Sagittarius is the palace or the throne. Capricorn is the marsh or the swamp. Aquarius is a factory or a studio, places where practical things are made. And Pisces is the water. Anyway. So now look at how the elements worked. For the fire elements, Aries was wilderness, Leo was mountains, Sagittarius, it comes to be a human place. Sagittarius is a human sign, as you'll find out later. He's going to differentiate human, animal, etc. So it comes to be a human place, but it has to do with the government place. Then for the earth signs, they're all earthy places. It's either a farm, a field, or a swamp. Capricorn is the swamp. Virgo is the field of grains, and Taurus is the farm. Then for the air signs, they're all places where humans are enjoying life, but the least enjoyable one is Aquarius because it's ruled by Saturn. So it's more like in Aquarius is the place which is producing the things that are going to be enjoyed in other places. Specifically, he said it was a potter's studio. So the potter's producing all the jugs and the carafes and everything that people use to drink and all kinds of stuff. So that's the way it breaks down. All the air signs are places of enjoyment. All the earth signs are places of growth, vegetation. All the air signs are kind of lonely places. All the fire signs are kind of lonely or adventurous places. Even the palace is kind of like not many people are allowed there. And then all the water signs are wet. They're wet places and deep places. So right, like if your fourth lord is in Capricorn, then you won't want to be averse to living in a place like Florida or something. But if your fourth lord is in Aries, then you probably want to move to some place like Alaska or someplace East California or something. So like that, you could start to figure out best locations. You can also figure it out by house and all that stuff. That's an interesting question, Bardo. Ko Hashiguchi is here, yay. Bardo says, does ascendant sign determine what kind of body part is going to be important or prominent in the looks of the native? That's an interesting question. It may be. I think... I don't know. My knees are not very prominent, but I'm a Capricorn ascendant. Not the first thing you think about me is my knees. But then who would it be? So I don't know. I think it's probably more along the lines, it's probably more sophisticated than that. You probably want to look for the most prominent planet. You probably want to look for where the Raj Yogas are, the good yogas are, stuff like that. And that will be where the person is beautiful, where the moon is. As long as, especially if it's a bright moon, where the moon is. Yeah, then this makes sense. Just doing a quick review. I always just quickly review every theory on my own chart. Yeah, that's a good point, Kermit. The slight difference between Aries and Leo, Leo has an altitude to it, which is kind of a result of it having an authority, like a castle on the top of a mountain or fortress. Libra markets didn't really say so. It didn't think of Libra as markets. So that tunes you into how Mangalacharana and probably the people of his time were thinking about Libra. They weren't thinking of it as mercantile. They were thinking of it as artsy. Which really, with the mercantile thing, I don't know. But it's a Venus sign and it's an air sign. So how do you not get artists? You got artists. It's all about beauty and production of art. Yes, Greedy. That's right. You predict where someone should live, where they'll be comfortable living based on the fourth house, fourth lord. That's a simplified thing. Like, realize that everything in astrology has a simple description and then a very complex way that you actually implement the description. Sagittarius is the palace. Thank you, Samantha. Thank you, Sudeep. My knees are actually spectacular. Actually, I was reading... What book was that? Jatika. No, not Jatika. Brihad Samhita. And he was going over physiognomy and he was talking about the knees and various parts. But he was talking about the knees and the ankles, and I was thinking how interesting it was. What they consider beautiful. How does the ascendant affect the body parts? I don't really think it's necessary. The ascendant is your template upon which you base your reading. So, especially for you guys who are, for those of you who are not practiced astrologers, it's not so smart to tell you that the ascendant will do something, because you'll jump to a conclusion about how to use that information. Really, what the ascendant does is provides the template or the backdrop on which, against which the interpretations are weighed. So, Capricorn ascendant would like, it has, if I tell you, for example, that a Capricorn ascendant wants to live in a swamp, that's kind of not telling it to you the right way. It's the right information, though. But the real truth of the matter is a Capricorn ascendant will have, that chart will have it will be easy for that chart to support wanting to live in a swampy environment. So, for example, for myself, Capricorn ascendant, I despise living in a desert. I cannot live in a desert. Forget California. Yeah, I much preferred New York over California, and over both of them, I much preferred Japan. And I even like to be in Florida. So that's what I'm talking about. The ascendant just starts to dispose things towards a particular direction. And the same thing with body parts. So you say a person with Cancer, a person with Capricorn is going to have something important with their knees. To be honest with you, my right knee was my weakest. My weakest body part was my right knee for a while, although it hasn't been bothering me at all. But it's kind of moved to the hips, maybe because of it being old. But for most of my life, it was my right knee. So maybe that's just because the ascendant is Capricorn. So things can pertain to knees a little bit more than in a different ascendant. But just having the ascendant Capricorn doesn't tell you anything, but it provides the opportunity for things to be related to swamps and knees. Hopefully that makes sense. Bright moon, Samurai G means half bright. Body features, everything will affect the body features, Bardo. Yet the moon being full or new completely, totally matters, absolutely. How would the phase of the moon not matter? It's so important. Right. Joaquin, J. Quinn, you need to live in a palace. It's very, very obvious. Because your fourth is Sagittarius. But, take it, it's a cute joke, but also the takeaway from it, the fact that your fourth house is Sagittarius is not particularly important, to be frank. It just means that your ascendant is Pisces. Now, if your if a bunch of things wind up looking like Sagittarius, like your fourth lord is in Sagittarius, or the planet which naturally represents where you live, the moon, is also in Sagittarius, and a whole bunch of things, and in your Navamsha, the fourth lord is also in Sagittarius, etc., 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 etc. The fourth house is also Sagittarius in the Navamsha. If there's a lot of Sagittarius in a person's fourth house, or if it's their ascendant, so they're predisposed to it, you could say, well, how the heck am I going to live in a palace? Well, you don't be so, use your imagination. What are the qualities of a palace? How am I going to live in a swamp? I don't live in a swamp. I like to live in humid places. I like to live in places that have black dirt. I like to live in places that rain a lot. I don't literally live with the crocodiles in the mud. It's the same way with the Sagittarian influence. You don't literally live in a palace with minarets and servants. But think about the qualities of a palace. Red cloth. Stone, if possible, right? A stone floor or a stone fixture somewhere. But the most important thing, not that many people. It's not an open house. You don't let the public in a lot. Stuff like that. Yeah, I do believe that the Aries wilderness may mean desert. That's a good point. Let me look up the word, actually. I'll look more carefully into the word that Mantreshwar used to see if sometimes it means desert. Fetishes. All right, what time is it? Oh, that's it then. But I guess that's good. We like to have questions and answers. So next week, he's going to start to talk about what planets own which signs. Then he's going to talk about the exaltation, the debilitation, and the Mul Trikon sign. So it'll be a little bit interesting. We'll talk clarify this concept of Mangalacharana cone. Yeah, that's for next week. And then the next section after that is the character of the sign, which he begins by explaining via the symbol that's chosen to symbolize the sign. All right, guys. So next Tuesday will be another Phaladeepika. This coming Thursday will be the next Bhagavatam. We'll get more about Prithu and the end of Prithu's life. All right. Well, look, Jewel Fool says, which signs like online chat rooms? God, it's got to be Gemini. It's totally Gemini. But you're always going to have a mixture of things. So what's the mixture to actually make it an online chat room? It's mixed with a little bit of Saturn and Mars because it's private. Sort of. It's not really real. And it's technology based. And maybe Rahu is even in there because it's so obsessive. So that's how you do things. You take a basic symbol and you mix it with other symbols to get some kind of specific permutation on it. You have to learn how to think. To be in astrology, you have to first of all be a thinker. So you have to be able to say, somebody wants to know about an online chat room. What is an online chat room essentially? It's a place where people meet to talk. And then it has other. That's the Swarupa Lakshana. That's the essential characteristic of it. Tatastha Lakshana. The additional characteristics are that it's on the internet, and then it also often gets pervy. So the Swarupa Lakshana is that it's just a place where people talk, similar to a coffee shop, similar to a town square. So whatever in the classical astrology books represents places like coffee shops, town squares, etc. So we know it's an air sign. And it's probably like a Libra air sign or a Gemini air sign. A place where people get together to have fun. A place where people talk. If it's a kind of chat room where there's sharing a lot of beautiful things, then maybe it's moving more towards Libra. If it's a type of chat room where they're more discussing or talking about things or joking back and forth, then it's moving more towards Gemini. And then you put, after you figure the Swarupa Lakshana or the intrinsic characteristic, then you figure the Tatastha Lakshana. Tatastha Lakshana will come, Tatastha, the secondary characteristics, will come by way of the kind of conjunctions to the thing, the aspects to the thing, etc. So, okay, this isn't just a coffee shop. This is on the internet. So let me see something. Let me see Rahu in the picture, or Mars for technology, electricity, stuff like that. All right, my friends. See you in 2 days.